Hello everyone, and welcome to my second ever Advanced Wars by Web replay analysis. I'm Domo. Thanks to everyone who watched my first video, really appreciate that. And thanks to everyone who commented on underneath as well. There was some good discussion there. I really appreciate that. There's been a bit of a gap from my previous video, which was semi-final, because the final took over a month to get started after my game had finished. So it's been a bit of a wait, but here we are. This game is going to be, as I said, this is the final of Division 2, the Amarriner Cup 3, and it's the final of the final, the grand final. So, exciting game. So, spoiler alert, I won the semi-final, and now I'm up against Warpuppy in the final here. This map is called Cycles to Gehenna. I should have looked up who made the map beforehand, but I'll put a link in the description. So I'll follow a similar structure as last time. I'll look at the map, I'll look at the COs, a quick bit about my opponent, and then we'll get going into the replay. So I'll just talk about my opponent quickly. I'm up against Warpuppy. I haven't played against Warpuppy before. I've seen Warpuppy around, seen their name around in the tournament and also in the Discord. So I know they're a reasonably active player. I don't know much about them, but I know that they are obviously in the final. It's taken 8 games to get here at this point, which is quite a slog. The whole tournament has taken, I'm not sure how long it's taken, but I'd imagine over a year at this point. So I think there's a little bit of tournament fatigue setting in, and certainly in the few of the kind of grand final stages, you tend to see 1 or 2 people just dropping out after a few turns because I think just the pressure and the time they've taken is taking too long. But in Warpuppy's last game in the semi-final, they were certainly played at a patient pace and just quite solidly. Their opponent overextended, and then Warpuppy was able to punish them for that. So that's the style of play that I like, just holding your position and then punishing any mistakes like that. So I'm expecting a pretty solid game in the final. There's a nice little addition of a little on-site trophy, which is quite a nice little thing to be playing for, as well in this game as well. So that's quite nice. It's not the fancy ones that Division 1 gets, but it's nice anyway. So we'll see who ends up getting that as the game goes on. So let's have a look at the map, and I have this time hopefully managed to get a little tool that lets me draw on the map, so I can actually show you the different areas of the map. Hopefully that will work. Bear with me if it doesn't. Let's see if I can get that going. So Cycles to Gehenna, it's I would say a simpler map, strategically simpler than Delphinus, which was the semi-final game. It's a nice map, I think very solidly made, but I think it kind of, there's broadly speaking, a relatively clear strategy, or certainly division level tier 2, which is what I'm assessing it in. There may well be other strategies at different tiers, but I didn't really look at those. In terms of the structure of the map, you have 2 base versus 1 base, 1 airport, pretty standard structure. A reasonable split down the middle, and then a clear kind of contested area in the center. So let's just have a look at the area each base is in charge of, if I can get this little tool to work. So from the point of view of player 1, which is me and Bablaze, let's look at the 2 base side here. The area that the 2 base has, basically, the guaranteed area is this. Anything inside of that is guaranteed, or certainly should be. The 1 base should not be extending over to here. That's a mistake. Apart from later in, sort of late mid-game, I would say, but we'll see a little bit of that later on. But this is basically guaranteed. There's some interesting questions about how you kind of route your capture chains. So for example, from this base here, you can send 1 infantry back to there, then to there, and then round to grab this city, but it takes quite a while. So there's a sort of question mark around whether you should send 2, because you'll get this city quicker, but you're obviously taking away an infantry away from the front line, so it's questionable. That's not what I did, and that's not what I would choose unless you were playing deliberately as more of a stally approach. But basically this area is the 2 base, and then you have from the two bases perspective, this, let me see if I can draw this. These two are the most contested, and the mirror on the other side. But they should, under normal play, fall under the two-based control. With this one here, the lower one actually is can be covered by the one base as well, as both. One of the kind of key aims you'll probably have is to basically try to join up your forces so that the two bases pouring into the center, the one base having finishing captured all of its kind of relevant properties, then starts to pour around and connect up the armies with the aim of holding the center. That's basically your kind of general strategy. So there's questions about trying to interrupt your opponent's captures on the mirror cities and prevent your ones being interrupted. But that's kind of going to be the core. Then there's a few other interesting properties here as well, if I can get rid of that. So I'll talk a little bit about these two as the game goes on. I'll show you which one I'm talking about, these two. Because we'll see an important thing that happens then. But under normal play, these ones they're interruptible but not really contestable, in the sense that the two base can potentially interrupt them given certain conditions, but they're not going to be capturing them unless something has gone terribly wrong for the one base. Whereas this property here, there's potential for the two base to capture it. It's unlikely, but it is possible, and it's certainly interruptible from multiple properties. Infantry capturing on here or here can easily interrupt any attempt to capture this. But there's some interesting questions around things like a mech can come over the mountains or various things like that. And of course, if the airport comes along online, that can force back some of the two base. So this is a very contestable one, or it may well just stay neutral, which is also not a bad result. So that's from the two base side. From the one base side, it's kind of what you'd expect. It's the opposite of that. So this area here is where you're trying to go on this side, and of course you have anything over here. And realistically speaking, this property here should be captured by the one base under normal circumstances, because it's such a long way. You see how far it is for infantry to get there to interrupt that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's about 100 different moves just to get there. It's a long way away, and you'll have a lot of coverage from your own side. So you would expect this to fall under normal circumstances, but it can be interrupted, and we'll see kind of how that develops in the game. I won't talk any more about this side because the game will show how this plays out, how it should play out, and how it doesn't necessarily play out. And there's another big question about whether you go for your island. But again, we'll see that in the game, so I won't go into that any further. So that's your basic structure. In terms of CO choices, I'll just quickly say, your basic plan then is to, looking at the map, you might think that it's possible for the two base to just pour resources up to the north, essentially heading up here. That was a truly terrible arrow. But then pour around and try and overwhelm the one base. That is, in my view, basically a losing strategy unless the one base really does muck up. And the reason for that is simply that you'll lose the center, because these two base here is going to be then pouring into the middle, and you can't let that happen because of your HQ, and also because if you lose all of these contested properties, then you're going to be down quite a bit. So that's not really ideal. It'll be very difficult to come back on, because your HQ is going to be completely overwhelmed. So generally speaking, this is a kind of an illusion or a lost leader. You don't want to be heading up here if you're the two base. You want to be heading towards the middle, basically. Okay, cool. So let's look at the CO choices. This is a tier 2 matchup. So there are different ways to approach it, but in my view at least, this is basically a central control. Your idea is to basically, as I say, link up your armies. One base comes around there. Sorry, two base comes around there. One base comes around there. Combine them in the center, and then you can strike either up or down, split your opponent's army. You can move both ways and try and capture both of. You can in theory capture both these properties. Although this one is pretty tricky to catch because it is within 1, 2, 3. Oh, it's not quite within 1 turn, sorry, but it is within a power if they're max. But basically, they're splitting the army, and then you just have so much control. You can go this way and grab this lot. You just got too many choices. That's your basic strategic plan. Now, given that, which COs are going to be effective on this map? Well, it's not really, in my view, an artillery map. That's probably the first thing to think about. It is possible to sort of set a bunch of units here from this side. If you're player 2, a bunch of units here, you can have an artillery sort of in the middle or whatever. But it's not really doing very much. Especially given if you're against a bunch of tanks. This is very, very low defensive terrain. Things are very brittle around here. Any infantry wall or anything like that is going to be it is weak, basically. There's a lot of, this is a kind of a brawl area. Now, there's also potential for, so what I'm doing at the moment, sorry, is just looking at the units that are relevant, basically, to help decide which CO we're choosing. So there's a potential for mechs to come in. They can come straight across here. In a couple of turns, they're already guarding this city, if you're still trying to capture your one. They can also position themselves on these mountains, which is quite nice, and then strike in the middle. So they have some use, but they all are also very slow. And as soon as they step off the mountains, they're then on this extremely weak terrain. A single infantry hit against them is going to cause a lot of damage, basically. And a tank can probably not one-shot them, but it would be very close, and a max may be able to one-shot them. And yeah, that's true. The other thing relevant to that is the comm towers. So there's one guaranteed comm tower, or pretty much guaranteed, for each side. And there's another comm tower on the island. But again, I'll talk about the island later. So you definitely have one comm tower, which makes this whole area even more brittle. So I would say the mechs have some use. If you were a CO like Adder, then they probably have a little bit more use. But this is tier 2, so that's not going to happen. In terms of other units, air is useful, absolutely. I would say it's probably essential to have some air, but it's also important to realize that an anti-air can, within 1 turn, it's here from the 2 base, which then covers, quite a large area. That's not exactly what it's covering, but you get the idea. It covers the whole center basically within 1 turn. So the air is still powerful, but it can be shut down depending on the order of the builds. So it's powerful, but not overwhelmingly powerful, I'd say. And you don't really want to be sending your air units over here because it's just going to get completely stuck and you'll have to come back round. Then, so basically it's a tank. It's a pour tanks into the middle situation and try and dominate the center. And it's a tank brawl, basically. Now that obviously inclines it in favor of aggressive COs. I would say someone like Sammy, for example. There's a lot of infantry floating around, which is quite nice for Sammy. But there's not. So then Sammy can certainly, in theory, contest a bunch of the contestable properties and get some of them. But her weak tanks are going to make the matchup, especially if you're matched up against Max. I've played that matchup before and it's horrible as Sammy. You do have one comm tower, so it's not awful. And as I say, mechs can do a little bit. Mechs, you can probably grab this one, but it would be very painful, basically. And because artillery isn't so great, I wouldn't go with Sammy. Eagle equally is very, again, it's a stall CO, and this is just, in my view, a map that favors aggression, or a reasonable amount of controlled aggression at least. So basically the options of Max and Olaf. I think both of them are completely viable. Olaf, it's in terms of the overall income, I can't remember exactly how much it is. It's like 22k or something like that, which is good for Olaf. That's 22k without the island. I think with the island it's 23 or 24. I can't remember the exact figure. So those are good numbers for Olaf, basically, which means that Olaf has a lot of flexibility, and if it's Max versus Olaf, Max, in my view, has a slight advantage because of the sheer aim of grabbing tanks in the middle. But Max has to be very, very precise, basically. Max wins through building up a lot of pressure and then winning with one blow or maybe two blows, but you can't afford to make a mistake on that blow because Wind Fury is just going to completely destroy you otherwise because it's going to keep coming basically. So I think both of those are viable. I was half expecting to be against Olaf, but Warpuppy did actually message me beforehand to say, should we both agree on not being Olaf? I actually wasn't going to pick Olaf anyway, so that was completely fine with me. It's worth noting, actually, if you are considering messaging an opponent, that by doing so, you kind of let them choose your CO, because if I had said no, I knew what they would pick, as in Warpuppy would have picked Olaf. So that gives me actually the option of picking their CO for them, which isn't really ideal. But it's up to you whether you want to do that or not. I did agree, and we both went with Max, but I was already going to go with Max anyway. So that's fine. So yeah, that's the kind of setup, I think, and let's get into the game. So, start of the game, first moves are pretty standard as you'd expect, grabbing the base. And I'll take you through to the second move, well, not my Warpuppy's second move, which is where things get a little bit interesting. So I've gone the complete standard. This is the standard route, and of course that's going to go to the base. Now let's have a look at what Warpuppy does on the second turn. So grab the base as normal. Now this turn genuinely surprised me, genuinely shocked me, I have to say. I was not expecting to be shocked on day 2, or now day 3 for me, but I was genuinely surprised. And the thing I was surprised about was this move up here. This first infantry from the 1 base has gone right instead of left. This may not look like anything, but it genuinely surprised me, and there's a very important reason for that. So the first infantry from the 1 base would normally go this way, start this chain here. So 1, 2 capture, 3, 4 capture, and would then continue there and then to the port. This is an extremely important chain. The second infantry would then either go and capture this one like it's doing there, or it would move to here for the reason of jumping across the mountain and securing this property before it can be interrupted by a recon. Now the reason you go this way first is because if you go this way, 1, 2, 3, 4, it can't be interrupted by anything from the 2 base. Nothing from the 2 base can get there in time to interrupt that, including an early recon. But if you don't go that way first, then it can be interrupted. That's the reason why you go that way first. It's also an extremely important chain. If you do this chain properly at first, you can grab all those 3 properties, which are all 1 base properties, without them being interrupted, unless there's some serious skippage going. It might be possible to interrupt the port, but the 2 base would have to skip basically everything. I'm not sure it even is possible, actually. And that's really important for the 1 base. The 1 base wants this whole area to be just locked down peacefully, complete your captures, move on with the game, because the 1 base wants to, once this whole area has been captured, start pouring resources around to the center. That's really important, because, as I've said, this is all about central control. If the 1 base is sending resources over here, then it's not sending resources to the middle, so then there's less resources in the middle, obviously. So what's the implication? The implication of going this way first is that this one here will certainly chain to here, with the airport, basically. Now, in the normal play, I would actually get the airport first, because my second one would go to there, and then to the airport. So this, to me, looks very cheeky. It looks like Warpuppy is trying to steal a march on the airport, which is annoying for me, because that's a benefit that I get of being player 1. And it's also leaving this property to be potentially interruptible. So this is a big symbol for me. Now, can I let this go unpunished? We'll see, and I'll talk through what happens. So my next move is just pretty normal. I've done that chain that I've just been talking about, and I'm going to chain to there and then to there. Now, this is also an important move as well. There's a key decision here for me to move to there or to there. And the reason, again, is being interrupted by a recon. Now, a recon from here and from my equivalent base in 2 moves. The first move gets to around about here. The second move either hits this city to interrupt from this forest, or it can hit this city from the road. So it can interrupt both of these properties. It won't be able to get to this one in time, but if this infantry here goes to here and not here, then the third infantry will go to here, but it can be interrupted. It's possible for it to be interrupted. So there's a big decision, I think, at the start of the game as to whether you basically skip. Excuse me. If you skip this property and then go over here to guarantee this capture, or if you go here, which then is this chain here, gets your airport earlier, but then you're allowing yourself to be interrupted. Now, if you're doing this normally, as in that you're getting this as well, then I think it's actually fine to go with the normal chain, because A, you get your airport earlier, and B, this property, it requires kind of a little bit of an overextension from the 2 base. We'll see kind of how that plays out. So I was comfortable skipping this, although I did have to kind of think about it for quite a bit, because it's quite a key decision early on in the game. The other decision for me is that because Warpuppy has gone there first, I basically have to mirror to a certain extent, because otherwise I'm going to be getting my airport a couple of turns behind, and that's not a good situation for me. I don't want to be that far behind in airports. Certainly not in a max mirror. So that's a normal turn. Now, do everything that you'd expect. Now, a key decision has been made here, which is no recon. So this move that I've just been talking about, of not putting my infantry there, hasn't been punished, hasn't been attacked. So now this infantry will be able to capture this without being contested. But a key decision has now got to be made by me, basically. The question is, do I try and punish this impotence? You know, doing this in the wrong order. This can now be interrupted. And there's another key detail that a very small sort of benefit that player 1 has. It's easier if I show you my turn. So normal captures, that goes to there. That moves, as I said, to there. I'm just mirroring, but this will go up to there. Now, one thing that's key to look at here is my infantry is able to go to there, which means that this can't be interrupted anymore. But this infantry, I've built a recon, so I can guarantee that I can interrupt this. I will be guaranteed to interrupt the city. There's no way that's possible for Warpuppy to get on there first. Now, if it was just this city that could be interruptible, it's a question mark as to whether you should get the recon. It certainly adds variation into the game, basically. Now, you may or may not want that. And the reason it's questionable, especially against Max, is that the recon will have to interrupt from a road, and it can be covered by a tank, which will then one-shot it on the road. So you'll be, for the sake of one interruption, you will be down a full recon, which is quite a lot. In this particular case, there's potential to interrupt both of these cities, which means I have a lot more flexibility, and I start to cause a little bit more panic on the 1 base side. The 1 base's capture game is now going to get interrupted. Of course, it interrupts my own capture game. And normally, I wasn't actually intending to go recon in this game. It's not normally the kind of opening that I normally play. But in this particular scenario, this is just too juicy, and I also have to punish. I have to punish this attempt to grab the airport first. Which is why I put the recon, and we'll see how that plays out. So yeah, now it's covering, but it's not going to be there in time, basically, and we'll see how that works. But otherwise, the capture has moved forward relatively normally. Although this is a very odd move. I think that's a much more sensible move. It probably doesn't matter that much, but it requires you to send another infantry around here. So now you're sending 2 infantry back, which means that there are just less infantry in the middle. Personally, I think that's questionable, but yeah. Now this is interesting. Sending this infantry to the middle basically guarantees this city, and I think that's sensible given that I have a recon around. The recon can't get there to interrupt as long as this goes straight there. But once the recon is around, then it can interrupt other things. Now we know that if the recon interrupts this city, the tank will one-shot it, so it will be dead, so there won't be any recons. But it's still completely reasonable to go early for these contested properties. The challenge of this one is that once it's got to here, it doesn't have an obvious chain, but what it can do is interrupt this. So it'll have a nice, juicy, interruptible target, and it can also help boost any capturing that go around here. So I think it's a completely solid move. Now, this is a really important thing here. The recon, and arguably this is the main value of the recon. The recon can be defended against by this tank, which again one-shots it. But it means that the player 2 must build the tank on the weak side. Now, that's good for me basically for a number of reasons. First of all, the tank is kind of a little bit. The tank will basically wrap around here, so it will get to the center in a reasonable speed. But the tank is also interrupting the capture game because there's quite a lot of bases to be captured, cities to be captured around here. You want one here. You probably want another infantry to be going over to capture this comm tower, and another one to be going to start this little chain, because this one's going to go to here, which doesn't quite chain properly. So the more I can draw out things from the one base, that just gives me some small advantages. At the moment, it's not huge because I've also interrupted my own capture game. But there's another big advantage that having this tank here will give me, but I won't. I'll let you work that one out yourself, and I'll point it out in a couple of turns' time when it becomes obvious as to what's happened. So there's sort of a sneaky little advantage of the recon. But otherwise, yeah, recon's moving forward. Just normal capture game. I didn't mirror this move because I'm behind on the capture game. I've interrupted my own capture game. I need to get these chains going, basically. I also want this chain going so that I can potentially interrupt the city if I need to. And there's at the moment, no real pressure on this city for me. I should be able to send units around to capture, so I'm not too worried about this at the moment. So I'm just going to do a normal thing, because I've already made one wild move. So let's just keep everything else pretty consistent. Here I'm just being a little bit fancy. This is actually going to go down to here and capture these. But it just gives me a little nice option of potentially hopping that to there, and that one on there if I need to. But I don't actually need to do that. It just looks kind of just keeps my options open, because there's no difference between going from there, then down, then 1, or going directly across, then down and 1. So I may as well keep my options open. Good general principle. So normal moves. Well, some of them are normal. I'll talk to that in a second. And grabs that. Okay, some good things to talk about here. So 2 infantry have gone backwards. I don't personally like that. You do get these properties slightly quicker, but because this does take a while, because it has to capture them, and they go 1, 2, 3. But it's all infantry away from the front line, and especially in a brutal matchup like this, I think that's probably a little bit too expensive. But that's my personal opinion. So now we see the impact of the recon decisions. So this is captured, but this is going to get interrupted. And this is, in my view, this is a mistake. This is a big mistake, actually, from Warpuppy. This infantry should be there. Should be on this little square here. Because then it covers the port, and it covers this city. It's not going to go for the comm tower. There's no need for a comm tower at this point in the game. You need to be grabbing this port, which is potentially contestable. So this is a really nice situation for me, because now I've basically guaranteed to interrupt this without even attacking it, because this can't cover it. So I can safely attack here, even though I'll lose my recon. I can safely attack this, And I've gained this, and I've now interrupted 2 cities basically for the price of 1. That's really nice for me. That's very nice indeed. And this mech isn't really, I honestly don't really see the point of this mech. I don't see what it's trying to do. This is a nice little area for mechs. They can certainly come to here, they can interrupt this city, they can slowly move over the mountain, but it feels, yeah, I don't know, I think it's a mistake. And it also is nice for me because every time a non-infantry is built here, it interrupts this capture, which is again is just giving me free. Every time any kind of attacking unit is built here, that's good for me at the start because these areas haven't been captured. So I'm gaining kind of money all the time basically. So let's see how I respond. Bloop. Most of my captures are normal. As I said, that's just hopping back. This is doing the normal chain, which is to there. This infantry will cover. Oh, sorry, the recon goes first. So max drops it down to 4. I think there's something like a 2 in 3 chance of that happening. But either way, it's fine. Because interrupting from here, well, I'll just show you the rest of my moves, sorry, to make it clearer. Yeah, so the tank covers this basically. If you can see that move, there we go. What that means is that this tank can't, because in theory this tank could just hit it from the road, 1 shot, and then this capture can continue. But because this tank is covering, it's not safe for it to do that basically because you get a first try, a max first strike. So the only way for this tank to safely kill this recon is for this infantry to move fully off the city. So it can hit it from the city, kills it, which guarantees that the capture then restarts, and also this is obviously injured. And that's where I get the value from the recon. So this city will now stay neutral for a reasonable number of turns, which also means that the city next to it will stay neutral because this is a little chain, and that's important to realize as well. So I'm interrupting essentially a 2 chain, not just a 1. Other than that, pretty normal. Yeah, and see here, if that infantry had been here, when this kills this, it could go back onto there and then grab that, and nothing can interrupt it. We can see there's nothing within interruptible range. And in my view, it probably should have done that because now, as soon as I start to get units nearby this is almost impossible to capture. So that infantry should have been there. And another infantry should be built there, which basically makes a beeline towards this port. So yeah, that comes off, it kills that with 1 shot, which is nice. So now I'm down some value already, but I'm up in charge, which is quite nice. And in a max mirror, that's actually quite useful, given that it's not, I haven't lost a big unit, I've gained value. We both lost value, so to speak, but my value has become charge, whereas Warpuppy's value hasn't become charge. So that's a benefit for me. Infantry moving around. Now this is a skip already, which adds a little bit of pressure around here. It potentially allows an interrupt of this one, but you've already skipped, so it's questionable. It doesn't matter that much because of the income curves will even out. But yeah, it's questionable. Okay. So as we see here, my 1 base side has basically finished it, or it's about to finish its chain. This will go to there, it can't be interrupted. Then I can kind of capture the comp tower at leisure. It's not actually desperately urgent to capture the comp tower basically because I'm already max. There are infantry moving towards the center, but they're not in conflict at the moment. The key thing is I need to capture this port to get my income coming, and then this area is basically safe for me. It's basically finished. I don't need to worry about it. All of my resources can now be poured this way. The only thing you do have to be careful about a little bit is this city. It's easy to accidentally lose it if once this one's captured. If an infantry just happens to go there, if you can't cover it with an infantry basically, you have to cover it with an infantry that's moved at least once. If it's here, it's fine, but if it's on the base, it's not fine. So you do have to be a little bit careful. You can build a tank which can cover it, but you absolutely do not want to be sending your tanks around this side of the map. This is a serious mistake because the fighting's in the middle. There's no way for a tank to get through here when the two bases basically build up a big army here. You can be, hello, can I just come through? No, you can't. So you've got to go around this way. So if you've sent a tank over here, you've got to waste 1-2 turns just to get vaguely around here, which is that's not good at all. So you do need to be a little bit careful, but basically it's easy as long as you just keep an eye out for it. Or you can do it like here with the mech that's covering that. In theory, if this was captured, that mech is covering it whilst also allowing it to move forward. So you've got options. Anyway, normal capture game. It's not a chain. I do start this chain because this is a great prize. If I can grab this is a great prize for me. It is interruptible, but it would involve a double skip, which is a lot of value that Warpuppy is then giving up just to interrupt this. So that's questionable. In my view, it's actually better to do it, but having done the double skip, I can see why you wouldn't want to do that. Yeah, this is going there. So this side's basically done. My aim here is to start putting pressure on this base. This city. Start to move things into center, but I'm just capturing a normal kind of routing, really. My tank is just going to take up position in the center. It's covering a nice area. It makes it slightly awkward for this to move through the middle, but it can easily move through the middle because it can just park on this capture city. So it is not really doing that much, but it's just giving me options basically. I don't want to get too fruity with this because my aim is to capture these two properties here. That's my target basically. And as we see, I'm already behind one. But now double tank build. It's a max mirror. I mean, we're talking tanks. Normally, I mean, but the reason why I didn't want to build a recon at the start was because you don't really bring a recon to a tank fight. Beep beep, bam. That doesn't work. In this case, obviously, I've gained value from it, and we'll see how that plays out even further. But basically, you want to be building tanks until you can get some copters. Tanks, copters, AA. They're your bread and butter in this. So here you can just quickly see how it's easy for the two base to sort of simply threaten this without. Obviously, I'm going to go for here, but in theory, it's possible if this isn't covered. So this sort of pins some units and forces them to. It's not a big problem because this infantry needs to go this way anyway to grab that comm tower. But you can easily lose it if you're not paying attention. But yeah, grab that. So it didn't interrupt. Ooh. Yeah, defensive mech. Okay, a big decision has been made now, which I'll talk about in a second. Let's just move every unit. Okay, this is probably the second biggest decision of the game. The first one was about the recon and whether or not to send the early attempt to go this way. That was a very big inflection point, and this is the second big inflection point. But just before I talk about that, I'll just look at this position here. This is fine. I mean, the aim is to try and capture them in these cities. It is completely fine, basically. I mean, this is a nice little defensive position, but this is the problem with the mech. The mech's very slow. It's not that clear what the mech does. The mech is nice if you can get a little army around here, and then it becomes very powerful as a defensive sort of a mini medium tank equivalent. But it's not really. I don't know. I'm happy to be against it basically once my infantry gets to the middle. However, that said, I don't have many infantry. There's a lot of infantry around here, and it becomes tricky for me to interrupt these captures. So I'm not expecting this city here with a tank on it. I'm expecting for that to be captured. That shouldn't be interruptible by me. This infantry should be able to basically take it for free. So my recon is only ever a temporary interrupt. And in theory, that's why I'm being a bit harsh on the mech, because the mech's actually quite nice here. In theory, that infantry can go to there, mech can go on there, the mech's then covering this against a tank strike, potentially get both cities in one turn. So that's not good for me either, because I've sacrificed to keep these neutral. we shall see. So, oh, sorry. The key thing. The key decision that's been made here is this. Warpuppy's gained the airport first and has made the first decision about air. This is a huge, huge decision. Absolute huge. Do you go for the island? Or do you build a battlecopter and send that air to the middle? This is a big, big decision. Now let's have a look at the island. So 1 turn, this can basically drop an infantry on the island. And this is a very juicy island, you know, 2 properties plus a comm tower. Ooh, that's a lot. So why wouldn't you go for the island, basically? It seems completely sensible to do that, right? And if you're going there first, you get the income first. So let's look at this calculation. What does it cost to get to the island? Well, it costs 1 transport copter, that's 5k. And it costs an infantry, because you're taking an infantry off the front line. The infantry will basically be on this island forever. It's gone. So the cost is 5k up front, plus 1k, we'll say for the infantry, because it's taking that off. Depending on how you want to calculate the value of a sort of a unit count on the front line. And you build up this 1 turn, that's turn 1, 2 to drop, 3 to start capturing, 4 to finish capturing, 5, 6 to finish capturing. So it's roughly speaking in about something like 6 or 7 turns, you will have earned enough. If you go for the cities first, you will earn, roughly speaking, the investment back. Because it's something like 1k, then 2k, then 3, 4, then 5, 6. So maybe it's slightly more than that, maybe it's 7 turns, something like that. So something like 6 or 7 turns to draw even with your investment. That just draws you even in terms of money if you go for the island. So it's day 8. Now, you're only going to see a return on that in probably, let's say day 15, approximately. And now, but post that day, you'll then get, in theory, 2 per turn. So it becomes a decent investment after that date. Of course, you don't have to go for that. And most people who go for the island seem to go for the comm tower first, which is another way of doing it. And it depends on how you value the comm tower. That's probably a whole separate discussion. But the decision here basically is you taking units away for a long-term investment, basically. And what you're also not doing is building attacking units. Now, you can build it straight after. You can build it your next turn. But now this gives me the option. I also have to face the choice now, basically. Do I mirror, go to the island, or do I build battlecopters and go to the middle, which gives me the tempo advantage in the middle. So this is a long-term investment. Now, if you're taking units away from the front line, well, it's a decision to be made. So we'll see how I react to this in a second, but I think you can probably guess. So normal. Okay, now here I've started to try and pile a little bit of units on here. This can't be interrupted now by anything apart from the tank, and I have 2 tanks. And that's an interesting decision. I'll just talk about that in a second. I have 2 tanks covering this. Well, I'll give you 3 actually. Sorry, and an infantry that can come in. Not that it needs to. This one is vulnerable, but this one is not. So I'm going to get that. Now there's a lot of decisions in this turn actually. This is basically the biggest turn of the whole game, I think. So let me just talk through some of it. Okay, here let's just work through the map. There's a lot of stuff going on here. This, in theory, is interruptible by this unit, but that would be a completely stupid move, because that infantry would then die, and it would mean I would threaten that. So that's unlikely to happen. Here I'm just threatening this. I'm threatening this just to kind of draw a little bit of attention this way. But really, it's also just, I have to go have something over here anyway to protect against that interrupting me. So I may as well threaten this in turn. This is now basically guaranteed. This tank can interrupt, but that would be a suicide move, so that's not going to happen. So I've now evened this. I've started capturing this, but it won't go through because there's too many things in play that can interrupt it. So arguably I shouldn't, you could certainly argue that you wouldn't start that capture, but I don't really want Warpuppy to be able to put a unit on there because I can't cover it with I can't get onto that city with my tank. So I'd rather do that and start a brawl where I'm on top of the city. So that's okay for me. And I'm also happy to injure some of these units so that they're not, if these units are attacking me, they're not capturing this as well. So, but it's still questionable. You could certainly argue that you would fall back slightly, but I'm happy to be doing that. This is the big decision here. One of the big decisions. This is me being slightly cheeky. The reason I'm doing this is basically just to stop this, because there's a load of infantry here and they're going to be capturing this. I want to interrupt it, obviously. It's not really covered by anything. Like you see that this isn't actually covering it, and this isn't covering it either. Now, a max tank with no because the com tower hasn't been captured. A max tank can attack from this forest, but it's a bit of a roll. I can't remember the exact odds, but it's not a great attack. It's a roll to basically. I think you come out slightly ahead, but then my counter attack will, as in my actual attack on my turn next turn, will roughly trade us down evenly. Obviously, if you attack from this forest, this can attack you back. You can potentially block it, but it's a bit awkward and it's a bit risky basically. So the forest isn't safe ground. You can attack from the plain, but obviously then you have weaker defense. So this is a bit of a roll. But it's possible for the roll to go badly for me, and it's possible for me to come out with a 5-7. I think, yeah, that's the number I remember as the sort of worst case scenario. So as I'm on 5, Warpuppy's on 7, which isn't that great for me. But I'm interrupting the capture because the capture has not started. So the calculation for me is every turn that this capture hasn't started, I'm gaining an extra K, or essentially Warpuppy is not gaining an extra K. So that's I can afford to take that equivalent damage, basically, because it also keeps Warpuppy slightly off balance as well. And it makes it awkward for positioning, because if you have this city that under your control, you can position things around it, whereas this is just awkward. So I'm expecting basically this to be a neutral trade for me overall. I'm completely happy for these tanks to basically exchange down to 0, or I don't mind if Warpuppy comes out with like a tank that's worth like 1 or 2 HP, because it's essentially has not much value at that point, as long as I'm interrupting. That's my calculation. It's also important to see that I've got 3 tanks coming in against 2, which is better for me. And in that scenario, you should be happy to trade down. Now, obviously, more tanks are about to come on when it's Warpuppy's turn, but if you're ahead in tank value, you're happy to trade down those units, because your equivalent value becomes more and more important. If you've got, say, 10 tanks and your opponent has 9, you kind of need to stand off each other, because the 9 tanks can destroy the 10 tanks. Whereas a 2 tanks versus 1 tank, that 1 tank cannot win, basically, unless someone accidentally deletes their units or something. I don't know. So that's calculation. But the key thing this turn is this copter. And so this is a decision. Do I mirror? If I mirror, that's the sort of conservative, keep things neutral approach, which is completely reasonable in the final. But if I don't mirror, then I'm basically up a unit in the middle, because this 5k basically takes out. Okay, it's not quite 7k. It's not full tank, but it's not far off. So it's basically taking a direct. It's not just a transport copter. Basically, it's taking a direct unit from the front. So now I'll have the air superiority in the center and an extra unit in the middle. And this is a max mirror. We're talking power here. This is what we're all about. However, by doing this, it puts me on a timer. As I said, you've got about 6 or 7 turns before this starts to pay off. And after that, I start to be behind. So I gained basically power for about 6 or 7 turns. But after that, so I have to basically use that. So really, we are on a serious timer now. But I'm up at, I have a decent advantage. So this is the key inflection point of the game, basically. Can I pull off the extra sort of tempo and aggression I have within a limited window? We'll see. Yep, so that was a sort of, I think, an average roll. Interrupting this with the tank is interesting. we'll see this whole play out. I'll just do the whole turn. Copter goes to the island, drops. Yep, as I was saying, this is a very solid move. Yeah, this is nice actually. Actually, I didn't even I hadn't actually clocked that this could happen. I completely forgot that infantry can attack tanks, even though it's not always a great thing to do. But it's nice in this one because it just makes it just low enough that it's not awkward for me to attack back. So I think that was a good move. And there's plenty of infantry around here, so that's reasonable. Okay, a number of things in this turn. Here we see the consequence of not getting this city. Like, this is easily to be interruptible. I can interrupt it from 2 cities. Sorry, from 2 units, 2 positions. But there's a lot. But having said that, there's a lot of cities being captured here. So I do need to. This can interrupt that, but this is already committed to interrupting this. It's going to interrupt from this silo. And I'm expecting for this to get captured fully. But all I need to do here is just keep this unit off balance. My only aim over here is to keep this neutral. I'm not trying to capture it myself. So yeah, this is off balance. It can be interrupted. I obviously want to capture this city, so I will. I've got enough to interrupt this. I've distracted units over here. There's a tank being built from here, which is, again, fine with me. It does cover this, but it can't really attack because the tank will then be distracted over here. Now, we don't want that, or Warpuppy doesn't want that because, as I said earlier, I mean, it looks like there's kind of a big empty area at the moment, but very quickly this is going to start filling up with units as we start to get enough income to build a lot of units. A tank over here is going to be basically wasting its time in the edge of the map. The tank has to go around here and join up in the middle. So this move here was very aggressive. I can understand why you get your unit onto here. I think I spent a little bit of time trying to figure out some good tactical response to this. I did come up with a nice one, but there's definitely different options here. But well, I'll show you how that goes next one. I'll just show you my response. Actually, it's probably easier. Background is now basically finished capturing. It's nice to get the comm tower online next turn. Yeah, I interrupt from here because I don't want to be drawing. I want this infantry, if it attacks me, to have to attack me from the road, because that means that I have the potential to hit it back. So when I'm countering, it's just slightly better for me. Obviously, I'm on a slightly weaker terrain, but I want to force this into my area, which is this area of the map. Whereas if it's kind of hanging around its area, that's harder for me to get to. Whereas it's easy for me to attack something from here. I mean, in theory, some of my tanks can even get to it. But it's questionable. Interrupt that because I absolutely have to. I want to keep this neutral. Basically, that's my aim here. It's really, really important for me to do that. Once this is captured, it's not going to be flipped. And this is the big tactic that I came up with, which I didn't see initially. Initially, I was going to do quite a sort of conservative move, but let me just finish the turn and I'll show you why I did that, because this looks, in theory, this looks really terrible. I'll just show you why. Interrupt the city because it's essential that I do that. I have no option but to interrupt that. Let's just play this through. Okay. So a number of things happening. I basically mimicked Warpuppy as a thing here, and I've even traded down. Now, that's great for me. As I said, every turn that this is not being captured, I'm essentially gaining a K of income, or income fulfilled by, or ungained by Warpuppy. So I'm completely happy to trade down here. I'm even happy to lose this tank fully at this point because, yeah, it's 3. You don't want to be giving away too much, but that's fine for me. Overall, I've gained an even trade, and I've kept Warpuppy sort of pinned slightly back, so I'm completely fine with that. But this is the big decision here. This basically killing the mech. I didn't need to kill the mech. I could have attacked. The nice thing about the mech being there basically is that it covers this tank, which is why Warpuppy felt comfortable to go in and attack with the tank. Because if I attack the tank bank from this city, then obviously the mech can hit me. Now, I did debate doing that anyway, because once the mech's been interrupted by this, the mech's on, I can't remember, the mech was on like 7 or something. So it's not at full strength, and if I get the first strike of max onto this tank, then that's a pretty decent hit. I think it's probably down to 4, and then be like 4-8 probably is the most likely. So then the mech can hit me, and then that can hit me, which would probably basically evenly trades us down, but the mech has taken some damage. So probably overall I'm certainly neutral, if not slightly ahead. And as I said, when you have more direct units, you're happy for these neutral trades, basically. Warpuppy is behind, and Warpuppy has decided to go to the island, which basically puts them on defensive footing. They need to basically stall until they get value out of this. So they should not be being hyper aggressive. You should, in my view, you should just interrupt this with a single infantry. That's enough. All you need to do is interrupt it with 1 infantry. That you're completely fine. Now the nice thing about this is that when you look at it initially, you think, can't this tank just hit my tank from the city? Because that's really powerful. I can't strike it back. I don't think can I even reach it. This tank might be able to reach 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, it can reach, as long as it's not blocked all the way through, but it could be blocked. But it's not actually possible for Warpuppy's tank to get to the city because of this little wall here. If you see, that's not accurate. Okay, that's not an accurate. See, if you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it can go around here, but it can't go this way around because nothing can actually kill this infantry. None of these are in range. This can attack it, but it may or may not kill. I don't think it can kill. Sorry, I think it can take it down to probably about probably 2 or 3 maybe, but not kill it. So you have to attack me from either this plain or road. And if we see this little copter here, this copter covers both of those. And also, obviously the tank is also covering both. The tank's not actually necessary at this point because neither of these infantry can fully block. If they go there and block, they can be cleared by my units. So the tank is basically covering all the spots that you can, sorry, the copter is covering all the spots that you can get from here. Now, of course, this copter is also coming in too. So it can attack me and then be covered by its own copter. So it becomes a little bit of a brawl around here. But that's generally speaking good for me because this is a 2-base area and it's slightly harder for this 2-base to get all the way around here. It's just further, basically. So I'm happy for a brawl over here. As long as the brawl doesn't get too... If the brawl gets too far towards the HQ, then that's bad for me because I'm overextending. But if the brawl's around here, that's fine. Yeah. So this is certainly annoying for Warpuppy. Warpuppy needs to get onto this city pretty soon, but you can see that there's no supporting units here. This unit should basically have been built over here. Warpuppy needs some 2-base support because the 2-base is now, this has been neutrally traded down. Now I've got this unit in the middle. I've got basically more in the middle, so I'm just winning basically. And the positional control starts to kind of bite now. So Warpuppy does have a lot more infantry, or slightly more infantry, but without the support, they're kind of forced back a little bit. And yeah, the other thing, I think earlier on I said, can you spot the advantage that I get from the recon? Now you may, time's up basically. So the advantage is here. I've gained both of these cities. And Warpuppy hasn't gained these two. We're about to gain this one in theory. But we're day 9, and these are both neutral. But I've gained both of these. The reason I gained both of these is that because the first tank was built up here, no tank was built down here. So normally these tanks would be able to easily interrupt this one, certainly. So we did see earlier that it was possible to interrupt, but it required that double skip, which is expensive in itself. In my view, probably worth doing anyway. But this is the sort of hidden benefit of the recon, the distracting of the player 2 army up to the 1 base, and this is just extra income that I'm just getting every go, which is very nice for me. And we can see the income here, 1916. That's a decent, amount ahead. That's very decent. And this in itself is really nice. These are not going to be lost. It's very easy now for me to hold these. It's almost impossible for Warpuppy to flip them, because there's a steady stream of units coming here. There's a steady stream of air. There'll be tanks floating by. Like it's too easy to hold, and that's the extra. So it's not just the recon doesn't just interrupt these captures here. It also allows you to gain your captures, which overall is a really positive trade. That was unlucky. That was. This is a blunder. That's, in my view, also a blunder. Warpuppy is behind 3 on income. I mean, some of it's going to go through a little bit, but you have to take that city. It's free money basically. As soon as this gets hit again, it won't be on full health and it won't capture it. That was a mistake, and this was also a mistake, as I said earlier. This tank needs to be around here. Yep, you get a free kill on my infantry, but you've already been interrupted, and now this tank is way out of position. What's it going to do now? The only thing it can attack is this. But what tank shouldn't be beating up infantry on the edge of the map. That tank is desperately needed in the middle. Look at my kind of units incoming here. The tank's desperately needed. That's a mistake, basically. A very serious mistake. But clearing up some nice units, and my unit count's getting a little bit dangerous here, so I don't want to be losing too many units. Well, it's not that dangerous, to be honest. I have no idea why that infantry went over to there. That's in fact, no, I do know why. Actually, we'll show in the next turn. But again, it's a mistake. This area is not the 1 base area. This is the 2 base area. This is 2 base home territory. You don't want to be extending into that. That's a mistake. And especially don't want to be extending to that when I have the build-up of the directs. We've got, let's count them up here. If I'll just finish Warpuppy's turn so it's a correct comparison. Yeah, so, and just before I do that, Warpuppy's gone for the comm tower first, so next turn we'll get 2 comm towers. Now that sounds really powerful, and it is powerful. That means the infantry will have a lot of nice things, but you're behind on. I mean, this is why the direct unit number count matters. Like we've got 1 full strength tank, 1 mostly full strength tank, and 2 copters, and I've got that, but it's now my go. So generally speaking, and I've got a little damage tank, but it's kind of just useful for picking things off. That's not, and I also have a bigger income, so I'm going to start pouring things into the middle, and that's going to be bad. So in my view, you don't need the comm tower. The comm tower isn't threatening basically because you don't have the directs to back it up. You should go for the money because you need the money at this point. It's my view. And also, you already get 1 comm tower. The second comm tower isn't actually that important. It's good for infantry, but the infantry are going to get pegged back by the directs. As we see, in fact, I don't actually go for that because I have the option of doing that, which is quite nice for me. It's my turn, and now, well, let me just finish my turn. So I just counted the directs as they were. They were even at the start of my turn, but that's not the case at the end of my turn. Boom. Pour into the middle situation. Now the engine is running basically. We're pouring into the middle. And this is now I've got the magical 21k, triple tanks, and Warpuppy can't respond. Well, to be fair, they can actually respond because they have some savings, but regularly they can't do that. So now, if we look at the number of directs, we've got 1 tank and 2 copters. And I've got 5 tanks and 2 copters and 2 little damaged units. Okay, 1 damage. Okay, we'll net them off. But five to 2 tanks and even copters. That's a huge advantage. It's only day 10. This is looking really, really bad. This tank is way out of position. The reason I think this infantry went over there was basically to threaten the hit on here. Now I could have left this. I could have moved this unit. I want this unit to be able to interrupt this city if this goes onto it, because it can't be protected from both sides. So it couldn't do that from the tank. Sorry, from the forest means that this tank is covering. From this city, it means that this tank is not covering, but it is covering with a power, and we do have powers. But I wouldn't waste the power just on one tank hit. Although at this point in the game, when it's the only tank, I arguably would. But it's possible for this tank to hit from there, but it wouldn't kill it, which means it can still interrupt. If both of these units go and kill, then they can, the tank goes there, infantry goes there, they can kill this, which is a free unit kill. And this tank would have to use a power to get to the tank, but it doesn't need to get to the tank. It can just interrupt. If you imagine the infantry on here, the tank can interrupt from the forest, be defended by another tank which is built from the base, and then there's no threat over here. The only threat over here is to capture one of these cities. But if this infantry dies or is injured, then there's no threat, basically. And this is why it's a terrible idea for the one base to be fighting over here, or for both sides to be fighting over here. There's no real danger of these being captured, but you're just wasting your energy over here. This all needs to be going around the middle, because the middle situation is looking very good for me and very bad for Warpuppy. But yeah, the comm towers captured. Now 2 comm towers, but again, and this is exactly the situation I'm saying. So this looks bad for me, but it's actually really good for me. Brawl in the middle is completely fair. Just doing a lot of damage to my infantry, and that it is nasty because Warpuppy does have a lot of infantry, but it's not really a big danger for me. And now this infantry's had to go back there. It's easily interruptible by this tank if I want to. You've given up a lot of income for the sake of one hit on an infantry, basically, which didn't even kill it, I don't think. But and yeah, I mean, the whole powers are online at this point. And finally, I've got another 21k, but at this point, I would probably be building. I've got plenty of tanks. Basically, I'm seriously ahead on the tanks. Warpuppy built 1 tank, which means they've got a grand total of 2, and I've already got 5. So I don't really need any more tanks at this point. I can flip to AAs. I can put some copters in there. Because Warpuppy does have 3 copters, so they're slightly ahead in the copter game. So I do need to be careful, because if they get a decent strike on me, then that's nasty. And this little positioning here was designed to avoid those strikes against me, basically. And at this point, I just need to be careful not to. The only danger for me basically is the double copter strike, or even arguably a single copter hit that isn't properly respondable would then put Warpuppy at 3 copters to my 1. My copter can get a revenge hit, but if Warpuppy keeps bringing copters in, then they would be ahead on that. So I need to be careful not to lose too much of the air, because that has, in the kind of in the triangle, copters beat tanks. So I need to be careful of that, but it's not too difficult for me to worry about. So this is just a little bit of fiddly positioning to make sure. And this is what I was saying here. This is now completely neutralized. It can't do it. It's not going to do anything for the rest of the game, basically. This can come to there and capture that finally, at day 12 or 13. But there's no threat against my cities, so I don't need to worry anymore, basically. I can cover this with a tank, or I can position a tank here, which I think is what I actually do. Yep, there we go. This tank covers that. This tank can't hit back. It's now way out of position. It's just to get back, it has to go all the way around here. And the whole threat over here is now totally neutralized. So there's no point to that, basically. there's a little bit fiddly positioning in here because it's important that these copters are the problem. And remember, with powers charged, and there's even a slight potential for a super. It's tricky to get the super. And I'm just continuing to interrupt here because even though I have, a lot of my units are quite damaged and there's more infantry here, but these directs are going to start being able to chew up these infantry if they don't retreat. And I can finally start capturing this and actually guarantee it, which is nice. This was actually a silly mistake from me. That infantry should be there because the copter wants to go there. So my copter now has to go slightly further back than I was hoping. I meant to put it there because it'll be covered by an AA from here. But it doesn't really matter. And this is nice down here that I can threaten to, I don't think it would actually, because I've only got one com tower, I wouldn't guarantee a kill, but it would be essentially, so this has to retreat as well, which is nice. I think the toot base on this side does need to have at least one more infantry down here just to defend, but again, it's only a very minor threat. Yeah, AA comes out, copters 2 infantry, and we see that there's a really big, oops, getting a bit laggy. A really big income lead. I mean, I've got a 4K income advantage still. On day 11, one of those is going to be at the back here is going to be regained. It'll start to be regained from here, but I've just had a big lead for a while. I think Warpuppy resigns at that point, which is completely reasonable because if we see the middle here, I have total control over the middle now, or I will within one turn, basically, because the sheer number of directs in the middle, they'll just be able to do anything they want. What that does is it splits Warpuppy's army completely. There's no way these two forces can link up, and there's nothing even coming in. This is a way out of position. It's just a really bad situation. Yeah, it is a completely resignable position, basically. I don't think there's any way back from it. But yeah, cool. So there we go. That's the Division 2 final finished. Get a little nice little badge, which will be nice. Yeah, well played to Warpuppy. I mean, I've been sort of picking holes in everything that they've done, but they did actually do well. It's easy to kind of judge these things in hindsight and make it look as if they've just, blundered left, right, and centre, but that's not really the case. They have actually played very well. I think they played very solidly. And a lot of completely reasonable decisions, like going for the island is completely reasonable. There's a lot of kind of like knife-edge decisions that can go either way. So, generally speaking, I thought very solid play, a formidable opponent. Yeah, and they certainly shouldn't feel bad about this game. And well done for getting to the final. I mean, it's been a huge slog. Absolutely huge slog to get here, so yeah, congratulations for that. But yes, I hope that was enjoyable. I think the overall flow of the game is just about you've got to get to the center basically and not get distracted on the sides. Securely grab this here. The two key inflection points are this. You see the impact of these. These are both neutral still at the end of the game from that one recon, which has gained huge value, and I also gained these ones uncontested as well, which just gave me a huge amount of extra value basically over the course of the game, just a lot. It would be possible to gain this. I did actually see, after I had already bought the recon, I realized that Warpuppy could, I think a move that would be better for Warpuppy is, if I just show you actually, if we just go back to here, I've built the recon. Instead of grabbing that city, an option for Warpuppy is just to skip that city and go straight to there. Yes, you miss this city, but you do then guarantee this. You move to there, my recon moves to there, you then grab that city. Because it's annoying because your next infantry has to then follow up to there, but you guarantee that, and then you can start the chain. That's probably enough to neutralize the threat of the recon. And certainly would have given the recon much less advantage. So if I had actually seen that in advance, I may not have even bought the recon. Although I think the recon probably still just about gains value, even though it dies. It keeps enough off balance that I think that is important, especially as a max player. If I was Olaf, I probably wouldn't have bought it, but I think Max can certainly utilize that kind of pressure. And then going for the island, I think the island is just a little bit too slow. I think for stall COs, or if you're not against Max, it may well be worth it. Because you do get a lot of value. If the game goes on for a while, then you get value. But this is a brutal center, like a lot of conflict here, and you can't really afford to be taking your units away from the front line, because essentially you're taking a direct unit away in terms of what you can build, which is a big gamble. If you do that, you then have to send your other units around to make a solid defense. You have to be very focused on that. You can't be sending anything over here. But that's the key, I think, just getting hold of that center. And then if you can get hold of the center, you can swing up or down, and you've basically got a lot of options. Now, in a top level max mirror, I would expect basically a big standoff down the sides here. Bunch of tanks trying to connect them up. Bunch of tanks trying to connect them up. Both sides doing the same. You probably would get well, it becomes a kind of a pressure cooker, basically. And then it's all about if these properties haven't been captured early, then you can sort of foresee a lot of brawling over them. If they have, then it potentially stand off for quite a while, with neither side kind of risking moving. But I think once you've got air units in play and probably an AA or two, the walls become so brittle. Especially with powers, with this low terrain here, that you'd expect kind of pressure cooker for a while, and then bam, a couple of big all-ins, and then probably that's game over at that point. Someone's come out on top. There is Division 1. The Division 1 Grand Final is also taking place at the moment, but I won't comment on that. That is a max mirror. That's worth following. But I won't comment on that game because it's obviously ongoing at the moment. Yeah, I hope that was interesting and informative. Hopefully slightly less long than the previous one. And yeah, congratulations to Warpuppy. You were well played. And yeah, see you again soon. Take care.